This episode is brought to you by Hack Motion. Hack Motion is a cutting-edge wrist sensor for teaching wrist motion for compressed tour-like shots. I spent some time with these guys down at the show, and I really enjoyed how easy it was to use, and the calibration time was super simple, and especially the biofeedback option that will definitely make for a more effective golf lesson for your students. You can use it with your iPhone, your iPad, and it gives your students the feel to go along with the reel as you teach the proper wrist motion for better club face control, which, as you know, is huge in the teaching game. Used by some of the top coaches in our industry, Hack Motion is a must for serious golf teachers, coaches, or players. Also, when ordering upon checkout, use the promo code GURU, G-U-R-U, to receive free shipping, which is a $30 value. For more information and to order, visit their website at hackmotion.com. HACKMOTION.com today. This episode is brought to you by nvdhemp.com. So let's talk CBD for a minute. It's all over the news, and there are so many PGA Tour players using it, such as Phil Mickelson and Bubba Watson, to name a few, but there are many others, and now some top teachers, including myself, are taking advantage of this amazing product. But what is it exactly? Short for cannabidiol, CBD is a chemical compound from the cannabis plant. It's a naturally occurring substance that's used in products like oils and roll-ons to impart a feeling of relaxation and calm and to reduce inflammation as well. Now, it doesn't get you stoned, but it has many organic rejuvenating effects. One of my favorite brands is Inveed. Their CBD products come in 3 varieties: Relief, Clarity, and Relax. Relief CBD products help relieve pain and those sore muscles. Clarity allows you to focus on those critical shots or whatever the task is at hand. And Relax CBD products are for those anxious golf moments or those moments in your life when you just need to take the edge off. I would not endorse any product that I didn't use personally, and I can tell you that I've been testing this stuff for over a month now, and it's a game changer. I take a drop of Relax right before bed, and it's helped me get some of the best sleep that I've had in years, which, for those that know me, I'm up all the time with a busy mind, so it's really helped, and I feel so much better in the morning after just getting some deep REM sleep for a change. I also take a drop of the Clarity in the morning with my coffee to kind of get my day started, which is giving me an alertness and a focus that I have never experienced in my life. It's just unbelievable. I also use the roll-on for some sore muscles and joints after a run or a workout. Right now, I have an incredible offer for you. Go to nvdhemp.com and use the promo code GURU20, that's GURU and the number 20, for a 20% discount for life. You heard it right, 20% discount for life. Go check it out. I'm telling you, it's a game changer in golf and in your life. Now let's get to this week's episode.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. But like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I am Jason Sutton, and I am the Guru, where it is my mission in life to interview the top golf instructors, instruction minds in the business, break them down, get them to share all of their stories, best practices, and information that have made them all great and successful, and then ultimately share it with you so we can all get better at teaching and coaching this crazy game. Before you do anything, make sure that you download this episode and all previous episodes of the show and hit the purple subscribe button so you don't miss any future shows that will be coming your way. My guest on this episode is Garrett Chaussard. Garrett is the Director of Instruction at Skokie Country Club in the Chicago, Illinois area. You can follow Garrett on Instagram at Chaussard, that's GCHAUSSARD, and on the Twitter at SuperG_G1. Garrett is not only a great coach, but an outstanding player, as he played college golf at the University of Illinois and went on to play professionally for a few years and also played in the 2008 U.S. Open before turning to coaching full-time. And also just won Player of the Year for the Illinois section, which is incredible with as much teaching as he does and with also a 9-month-old daughter as well. So mad respect for that. This guy can really play. Garrett is a brilliant young coach that I really enjoyed spending some time with last week at the Top 100 Teaching Summit. So I was very excited when he agreed to come on the show. So I hope you enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with too many topics to list. So I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. So let's get to this awesome conversation with my friend Garrett Chaussard. Enjoy. All right, Garrett, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for coming through.
Oh, you're welcome. This is awesome.
I'm excited to have you on ever since we spent a little time together last week at the Top 100 Summit. And I've had my staff members, one of your now friends, Robbie Fales, just recommend you come on the show. And I've heard nothing but great things. And it was really cool to hang out and get to know you a little bit. So for those listeners out there that don't know your story, I know you grew up in Northern California, played obviously high-level junior golf and went to University of Illinois because you're a great player. Take us through a little bit of kind of how you got there, and then I've got some questions about your college career and as we kind of evolve into your coaching.
Yeah, I think I don't get to reminisce this much about it, so this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I grew up just as I think your typical junior golfer. I had aspirations of trying to play the PGA Tour and just continuing to get better. And I really didn't take a ton of lessons growing up. I kind of had a guy that I saw here and there, every month or 6 weeks, but nothing like we have kids in programs now. But all I really did, kind of a couple interesting things, I think, where my dad took a part-time job, second job working at a driving range. And so from the time I was like 7 years old till 11 or 12, he'd work a few shifts at night. And so one of the great perks of that job was to be able to hit golf balls for free. So we were up there almost every night hitting, just pounding golf balls away. One of your typical driving ranges, just, cement with the AstroTurf mat on top of it, just banging away at golf balls over and over again. And, I guess I could always hit it pretty good, but had no idea how to play. And I was very lucky, very fortunate that the club in my hometown, Green Hills Country Club in Millbrae, California, had this junior program where they allowed, I think there were 20 of us that had sort of junior memberships. We paid $120 a month, and I don't want to say unlimited, but we had 5 days we could play. And all I did most of my junior career was just go play golf. The driving range at that point was it's across the golf course. You need a golf cart to get there. And I started there at 11 years old, and I don't think I saw the driving range until I was 16. So we would just go play, and some days we'd play 36. We'd be there till dark. Just sort of your kind of ideally how you'd like it to be. It just, looking back at it now, is a very organic environment just to go play and figure it out with a group of friends. And, a few of them I still keep in touch with. They're some of my best friends today.
Did you play any other sports at that time, or were you just golf? No,
I played baseball as well. I played on our travel team. I played baseball until I was 13. And in Northern California, baseball and golf are the same season in the spring. So basically when I got to high school, I kind of had to make the choice of which sport to play. And I made the varsity golf team as a freshman, which it was, at the time, it seemed like a pretty difficult decision, but looking back on it, it was always going to be golf.
How good were you at that point? Because obviously you had to get crazy good from that. And nowadays kids are getting recruited at that time.
Right. I think I broke par for 9 holes at 13, 18 holes at 14. So, I think I got pretty good. What's interesting is, the benefit of playing. I remember my very first round that I played 18 holes at Green Hills and I was 11. I think I shot like 98, like barely broke 100. And from there, like, do the math, I broke par 2 years later just from just constantly playing.
Mm-hmm.
And really it was just one of those, I remember those are the days you remember forever, where just like, you have those good rounds going, and some days you lose it, some days you don't. You'll never forget those types of things. And that's it was just amazingly beneficial to have that environment so close to home and to have that much access to the golf course, because I wouldn't be here today without it.
So when did you realize you had a chance to play in college, and then obviously to play at a really high level D1 school? I know we talked and you said Illinois wasn't at the level when you went that it is now, but still pretty awesome to be able to play at a college like that.
Yeah, I was not heavily recruited out of high school. I didn't travel. I find it funny. I played 2 AJGA events. I played the Rolex and the Polo. So,
wow.
And back then the AJGA wasn't, at least it wasn't as large as it is now. There weren't as many events. So, to be honest, like, my family didn't have the money to travel around and pay to do it. And so I ended up, staying local, playing our junior events. I played in the Northern California amateur events as a junior. I kind of played in as much as I could locally. And so I think likely because of that, I wasn't heavily recruited, but I got fortunate. Coach Small saw me at the Polo in Florida, and apparently liked enough of what he saw, and just sort of, happened from there. I'd say I got very fortunate. I went from, at that time, not being heavily recruited. I had maybe a couple places I could play, but without a scholarship, and it just worked out, really worked out great. I got really lucky.
Yeah, that's cool, because that's a long ways to go from home too, right?
Yep.
I mean, it had to be a decent decision, because I know a lot of my kids are like, well, I could go here or here, but I really want to stay close to home for a variety of reasons. So tell me about your jump to college golf. I mean, I know you said that was Coach Small's first recruiting class, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So that had to be kind of interesting. You guys were probably learning a little bit together. So how was it playing for him, and what did you learn from him?
I think the biggest thing you could take from it, and he used to have this saying, is that golf is a blue collar sport, which, I don't think a lot of people would say that, but what he meant was that you had to work your butt off to get better at it. And so that was sort of the work ethic and that he instilled in us, that we had to get, had to put the work in and go above and beyond to just outwork everybody and get better. So I think for that, I learned an awful lot about how to play and how to manage a round of golf, which, there are definitely some good pieces in there as well. And nobody better to learn from somebody who had been at had played on the PGA Tour and had a couple, it was a Nike Tour at the time, a couple wins. So to have that experience was incredible.
Yeah. Any examples or like stories that you can remember, good or bad? I think that would be kind of interesting to hear about Coach, or just any of your playing tribulations, I guess.
Well,
it's got to be a couple.
Well, I think what I think set the tone early on. We were a very young team. Freshman year, we started the year with, I think, 13 kids on the team. We ended the year with 8. So that sort of set the tone for the level of expectation of what he was looking for to start out with. I blank on stories. I need to write some of these down at some point.
I know it's tough to be on the other end. Sometimes you forget.
Right. I do remember. He'll hate me for bringing this up. I thought.
I'm sure he doesn't listen to this show.
I might text him a copy just for fun. But no, he. I thought he was going to leave us at a. What was it? It was a Sonic. It was a Sonic drive-in. He was so mad at us one day after tournament that he literally he said
he's going to leave you.
He literally threw a couple dollars at us and said, just get out. And I swear, I thought he was going to leave us. I think we were in the middle of Tennessee, and he fortunately came back, and we drove the most just. I don't know that anybody said more than 3 words for the 8 hours drive back to Champaign. It was just I know that's that's not the best story to share, but it's that's reality. I guess it's just one of those things where he got so emotional at times, and was such a competitor himself that
Sure.
obviously something was eating at him pretty good, and he had to cool himself off.
Yeah, because I know we were talking at dinner, and you were talking about how his expectation was when you come in there that you're going to play professional golf.
Correct.
Right. Which I think is pretty awesome. And if you're, and that's why he recruits the type of players that he recruits.
Right.
So what was it kind of going through? And I know you played professionally after you graduated. At what point did you feel like, okay, I'm going to give this a go? And then what do you think helped you prepare for that part of your career?
I was probably always going to give it a go. At least I say that now, but I had a really good senior year for the most part. Especially the fall senior year, I did a bunch of things really well, and I kept getting better. I was never the best player on our team until my senior year, and led the team. I think I might have finished inside the top 10 at all 5 events in the fall. Like, I just had a really, really good, solid year, and then trailed off a little bit, but still played pretty well. And I just think that having the experience of traveling, and we'd gone to a bunch of different places, and you kind of get these are work trips, they're not fun trips in effect. I think that's sort of the mentality to start with, of when, at least when I would go to a qualifier, you're going there to get your work done, and that's it wasn't just we're not hitting and giggling out here playing golf. It's business. So I think that's probably the tone that he set, and he treated us like professionals that way. He's not going to hold your hand, and so you were accountable. You had to get your work done, and he let you know if you weren't. And from 6 a.m. morning runs, 3 days a week, which really was where the weed out that freshman year happened.
Those guys didn't want to run anymore.
Oh yeah, some of them didn't want to run anymore. Definitely didn't want to run at 6 a.m. So that was probably one of the lessons of just being disciplined and getting up. And I never missed a 6 a.m. run. I know, that was just something I wanted to. I always wanted to give it a try. So I think I always had that eye towards doing something bigger. And playing at that higher level. So I think we always for the most part got along with everything, and I was just soaking it all up.
So you graduate, and then what happens? How do we get into professional golf? Because did you go to Q school, or did you go to, because you played Canada, right? Or is that what it was?
Yeah, my first year, what did I do? I think, I know I went to Q school first year. Did not get out of first stage, and actually, I should have learned like the biggest lesson ever then, but apparently it took me until like 2016 to actually learn it.
What's that?
So it's like, and really, it's like just being disciplined and being patient, right? And so this is 2005. We're in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, playing first stage of Q school, and I'm playing okay. Like, I'm just kind of like him and Han around even par, nothing, not doing anything special. And I think I was, third round. I just played kind of an okay third round. I might've been sitting like 1 or 2 under for the tournament. And just in your head, the number to get through just keeps creeping further and further away. Mm-hmm. And I got impatient, and I shot 38 on the back 9 and shot 75, but basically shot myself out of it. Little did I know I was going to turn around the next day and shoot 63 and miss by 1. Wow. It's like,
so if you would have just hung in there a little bit more in the third round,
you literally never know when something like that is going to happen. So like, you'd think I'd have been smart enough to learn that lesson there, but apparently it still took until probably this year, to be completely honest, that I finally like learned to be patient and be disciplined. So
maturity, man. Yeah. That's all it is.
Yep. 100%.
And I know you played in the US Open one year.
2008.
2008. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. That had to be an unbelievable experience.
Yes, I was way over my head, despite thinking that I knew what I was doing. Looking back at it now, I was like, Jesus, I was so unprepared for that. It's a different level, and it's just a different stage. Being that it's won our national open and a major championship, and I don't know that you truly get the appreciation for how large of an event it is. It almost, at least, and this is just the overwhelmingness in the moment for me, at how it almost didn't seem like it was a golf tournament going on. It looked like all these people around, and there's always noise, people. And there's just hospitality tents and people yelling, and it's it almost didn't seem like a golf tournament at times.
Who'd you get paired with? Do you remember the first round?
I got the lovely, 2:50 p.m. off the first tee on Thursday. So I got to sit around all day and wait for that.
Oh my gosh. Wait for that first tee ball.
Wait for that first tee ball. And, I remember the one thing I did know at the time is that I had to take everything slow. The problem is, just took so darn long to get to 2:50 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did everything slow that day. I drove to the course slow. I ate lunch slow. I walked to the driving range slow. I did everything just trying to chill myself out, because I knew it's one of the things you can anticipate, that the first tee of a US Open, hitting that first tee shot, I'm going to be the most nervous I've ever been in my life with a golf club in my hand. Right. So I'd prepared for that. I'm like, okay, I've got to do this and go through process, right? Like the cliche sayings that we have,
sure. Yep.
Which are true. They're 100% true.
Yeah.
And so I remember I got to the first tee, and it's at that point, you try not to think about it, but you just eyes all around you. Everybody's there. And I picked out my target. I went through my routine, and I smoked one down the middle. To this day, I'm still not sure I've hit a drive as good.
Wow.
Just perfect, right down the middle of the fairway. And I'm so pumped up. Tony, my caddy, I'm like, see how good that was? That was fucking awesome. And so,
yeah. I love it.
And so we walk down, we get through it, and get to the next tee shot, and just we get the yardage. I pick my club, got a 5-iron from 190 into the wind. This is great. And I get up there, and I have to get to the top of the backswing, and I swear I've never felt a rush of adrenaline this hard in my life. And I hooked into the grandstands left of the green. And I found a way to make bogey, thank goodness. And I think in hindsight, what I really learned about that, it's kind of funny that I did a great job preparing for one shot of the US Open, not the rest of them.
You didn't think about the rest of the round.
No, didn't think about the rest of them. And at that point, honestly, it was just chaos, to be honest. And I really, my game, truthfully, my game at the time was heavily based on being really good from inside 150 yards, not great outside of it. And at a US Open, especially at Torrey Pines, you're going to need to hit the ball strike it pretty darn well. I got to play 9 holes with Jim Furyk on Tuesday, and as funky as that golf swing is, the ball flight was just incredible.
So pure.
It's just amazing how little the ball curved and how much control he had over it. And I go, that's what a top 10 player in the world looks like right there.
Yeah.
And I don't look like that at all. So
at this point, were you still chasing the mini tours, or were you teaching at this point?
No, I think I was still playing full time then. And so, and that was, again, it's little tiny things. Q school that year, I played really, really well, but happened to be at a site where the number was really, really low, and I missed by a shot. I think I shot 8 under for 4 rounds, and it needed 9. It's one of those little tiny things where I'd play well, but you can't control the rest of it. And the next year, I finally got through to second stage. This was 2009, and really, honestly, just played one bad 9 holes. My first 9 holes at second stage, and played fine the rest of the way. And to be honest, that was 2008, 2009, and financial crisis and everything else. And there's no funding for people that can't get through first stage, let alone second. So it's so I kind of, I don't want to say wasn't forced into it, but sort of I needed a way to make a little bit of money on the side a little bit. And I was fortunate to hook up with Kevin Weeks at Cog Hill that got me
Right.
kind of, and there was sort of a few transition years there where, let's be honest, I was probably still trying to play, even though I started to teach and help him out. But ultimately I kept getting busier and busier teaching from there.
And that leads you right into now you're coaching and trying to still play. It's got to be kind of an awkward stage, right? Because you're trying to put time into your game and also teaching, and you get busier and busier. I know I was talking to Robbie about that this morning. He's like, when did you stop playing? I'm like, when I started teaching so much that I couldn't prepare, right?
Right.
And that's one of my questions that I had for you, like, because you're still playing at a high level, especially in the section events, is like, how much time do you put aside to actually work on your game, or are you just that talented where you can just sort of pick it up and go compete? There's some kind of plan to that, you know what I mean? Like, you almost have to block your book and say, I'm going to put some time in to actually practice.
Until this year, which is where golf is so stupid. Until this year, I'd say like I kind of fortunate in some ways that, and my wife she'll totally understand this, but she travels a bit for work, and her busy season is in the summertime. And so what kind of worked out really nicely for several years, when she would be away on a trip, I don't have any reason to be home right away. So like I could kind of linger around and do some things after work usually, or I get in early and do something then. And none of those years was I even really that close to winning Player of the Year in the Illinois section. And this year, I have a 9-month-old, born January 26th. I took zero practice. I was 6 p.m. in the car at home, doing being a father for the first time. And the year I least tried to win Player of the Year, I win Player of the Year. And so it's just a stupid game. It really, really is. And, call it perspective or whatever. And one thing she said to me when we kind of reflected on the year a little bit was that while I hadn't physically practiced very much, not that I haven't in the past, I've got years and years and years of grinding away at it.
Sure.
But the immediate practice, just literally practically nothing. I would make usually one swing a day somewhere. Like I kind of had that rule. It's like, okay, if I'm going to be here, I need to at least hit like one shot. And so I do that, but largely no practice at all. But she said, you went into each event seemingly very prepared to play. Whether it's scouting the course, and I will, free plug to Scott Fawcett. I completely pretty much adopted a full decade strategy. And I swear I was more prepared to play golf this year than I had been in any past year. So yeah, what a dumb game.
It really is. Yeah. That's just, you're just, again, that's maturity of thing. Gosh, if I would have known, if I'd had a decade, maybe when you were trying to play, maybe that would have got you that 1-2 shots to get you through,
I guarantee it. I'm not a betting person, but I'd bet.
If everybody could see your face right now, you're just like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd have had it.
I tell every junior, I practically scream at every competitive junior player that I teach. I said, trust me, if I would have had this when I was playing full time, you would not know me. You'd know me because I was on TV playing golf.
Exactly.
So it just, it's such a stupid game sometimes. I can't think of it any other way, but we love it. We love it.
Yeah. So I know you've got a lot of influences, and we can kind of get into some of your mentors, but talk about your first job, working for a legend like Doc Suddy, and then Kevin Weeks, another, high level putting coach. Talk a little bit about those days, and we'll kind of get into some nuts and bolts here of teaching as well. But I mean, I think that had to be such a great start for you.
Could not have been any better. I don't think it could have been any better. To get to watch Doc teach a little bit and to pick his brain on some things, and he was very generous. And I spent most of my time initially helping Kevin with short game schools and clinics, setting up, cleaning up, doing all the grunt work. And Cog Hill's such an interesting place. It's a 72 hole public facility, just a factory. And so just the number of people that run in and out on a daily basis, and a big teaching staff, and just being in that environment, especially with Kevin with the putting lab at the time, which, we had 12 cameras. I rebuilt the lab like 3 times for him to add stuff and put it away.
Mm-hmm.
He had one of the first Sam Putt Lab units in the country back in 2006.
Yeah, I remember seeing some videos of like proponent group stuff that they did. It's like we didn't even know what that was about. It was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, I mean, this was, what was this, 09, 010, 2010. We're, with a Casio, down at the ground level, look, video and ball roll at whatever fastest frame rate with a, Home Depot spotlight sitting on it's most homemade thing we could come up with. But, we're watching the ball roll off of it and tracking that back to Sam Balance Lab data, Sam Putt Lab data. Eventually we got Quintic in there with all the cameras and Kevin's laser board, and it just really way ahead of its time. And I think that it definitely shaped sort of how I viewed, I guess, getting better at something, right? It's like, if you have questions, you just have to either buy something that helps you get the answers, or you got to go find somebody who knows the answers and learn from them. And, Kevin was always somebody who, hey, if we had questions, hey, let's go try and figure it out. And, that's what we did.
Any nuggets or anything you can kind of remember of the things that you learned? There were aha moments that probably now are like, okay, yeah, we should have known that. Because I know that's the way we are now. It's like, oh yeah, we knew the putter didn't move straight back, straight through.
Right.
But I mean, myths and misconceptions, I think, get cleared up when you have research and technology to back it up.
Yeah, we had a robot, a putting robot back, whatever that was. I got to spend a lot of time with that. I can't tell you how frustrating and how beneficial it was just messing around with that thing. I'd spend hours just trying to set the thing up and go, why won't this thing do what I want it to do? It's like, well, I'm not an engineer. I've got to learn this on the fly. So that was fun. But one of the big things, and this was a proponent thing, I believe, back then, where, we'd set the robot up basically 10 degrees out to in for path, but the face would be at 0 and the ball would still go in the hole. So, sort of obviously debunking the face to path relationship that, we certainly take for granted now. It's like, doesn't everybody know that by now?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was certainly one of the things. And, I think we were probably a little ahead of our time with pressure data, especially in putting. I still don't hear people talk about it very much, but, you do.
I'm one of the, I don't talk about it enough, but I'm measuring and, but again, it's like, as soon as you start measuring a lot, then you have more questions. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, not everybody does it the same. And that's probably what you're going to share. It's just like, that's why I want to lead into kind of how we teach is there's so many variables and there's so many variabilities from individuality in putting that it's like, the more you try to learn, the more confused you get.
Right. Yeah, no. And we did some ball roll testing at the time. So with the robot, I set it up to basically do to different launch angles and different spin lofts, for lack of a better term. Basically, launching it high with backspin, driving it into the ground, top spin, and vice versa. We did a bunch of different ones. And, so like you do that test and you come up with what you think you're going to get some answers to, like what's going on. And you're like, crap, there's a lot more going on to this than we thought. So you always end up with, at least every time I do a test, I end up with way more questions than answers, certainly. So yeah, I think that's where I started, where the curiosity of learning more started, despite the fact that, if I'm being completely honest, I viewed myself, and probably still do to some extent, as a failed player. So I want to figure out why I failed. Like, I'm like literally digging down to try and figure that out. So that's probably where some of the motivation comes from also.
Yeah. I mean, I think, in the root of all top coaches like yourself is that curiosity tends to pop up. And I'm always wondering where that comes from. You got to have motivation.
Right.
Like for me, I just want to always be the best. I'm just like, I still want to be the best teacher, the best person and the best version of myself, I guess. But I just want to be number one. It's but everybody has their own motivation to go, all right, let's dig into it. Let's do it the right way. Right. So it's like surrounding yourself with, people that are smarter than us and have the answers, which sounds like that you've done a great job of. So who are some of your other influences as you sort of gone through this journey?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about the first few. My original teacher was McSorley in Northern California, and he was a PGA Tour player in the 80s. So, he has a good bit of influence as well. He was a little hands-offish. So it's like one of those, I think you learn that when you see somebody that has some ability, that you just kind of sprinkle here or there. You don't like try to impose yourself on them. And so I think the major influence there, if I think of all the people I've gone to see, it's not that long of a list, but, guys like Bernie Najar and John Dunnigan. I've been to Rock Hill and seen Michael Jacobs several times. David Orr nowadays is, he's my guy. I love David. Learned so much. And every time I get to spend time with them, or we go to a flat stick seminar, it's like such passion and energy. You feel ready to go out and get better and help your students get better. Then you add on all the education after that, which is probably a different bit, but I'm probably a blend of all of those. And also at the end of the day, my dad is he's from Western Pennsylvania, so there's probably a little hard ass in me somewhere. So there's, I think, influences, there's some influence there as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of I'd say I'm just a melting pot of a lot of different people. And I think when I look at that as one of the things that, I try to live by is, and I think, you do, and you teach your staff to do this too, where, I just want to have multiple ways to solve the problem in front of me.
That's right.
And so the more varied you can make your toolbox, the more you expand your knowledge, the better you're going to be able to help more people. And I do think that's, going back to Cog Hill for a little bit, my time teaching there was such a varied group of people. Like I wasn't specialized into one area. I taught our beginner group as part of the deal to start teaching. I helped Kevin with, I helped Kevin observe some tour players, and he was in there running all the technology in the lab and helping him with his junior clinics and developing them. And, I had a few friends myself that, mini tour players that I got to work with, and then everybody in between. So, when you're dealing with a group of people that is that large and that varied, you better have more than one answer. Because not everybody needs the same thing, and
right.
You have to be very adaptable for each person that is in front of you.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I mean, I get frustrated a lot of times when young coaches come out and they just want to go and teach tour players. Which
they don't want to teach tour players. They're a pain in the ass.
Exactly. Yeah. Be careful what you wish for, right?
Exactly.
But I think I've always told my guys, it's like the beginners will really make you better. And teaching a more diverse skill set, I think, like you said, kind of gives you a more well-rounded toolbox anyways, right? So, I mean, it's just part of the process. Let's talk a little bit about your philosophy. I mean, would you call yourself mainly a putting coach, or you teach everything, right? I mean,
I've got everything. I think I'm likely more nationally known as a putting coach. Mm-hmm. But at the club every day, I'm teaching our seniors, I'm teaching our juniors. We got everything in between. And it's, at the club, it's mostly full swing stuff and short game stuff. I don't give as many putting lessons as I probably should, to be honest. It's the typical, right? It's like, hey, we've got an hour. Let's spend 45, 50 minutes here, and then let's spend 5-10 minutes on the putting green afterwards, as if the 5 to 10 minutes is enough time.
I don't do that anymore. Yeah, it's like I get that too, because they think it's so easy, and I think it's one of the most difficult parts of the game. And go ahead.
How many gray hairs do you need before you can pull that trump card? I don't think I'm there yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I guess you got to have that believability, but it's like, I don't know, I'm getting old enough now where I just sort of, sometimes things come out where I'm just like, I got to tell them what I think.
Yeah.
But I do it in a nice way. I'm like,
Yeah.
look, I explain because they know that I'm sort of a, at least in my area, known as a kind of a putting guy. When pros start coming to you just for putting, then I guess you got a little something going on. But I don't want to be a full time putting coach because I don't want to go broke. So
Exactly.
but I'm like right there with you. It's like they don't really see the value, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, can you take a look at my putting stroke? Five minutes left in the lesson." I'm like, "No, I usually say I could probably hurt you more than I can help you, because
Yeah.
most of my putting lessons last 2 to 3 hours." And they
So
just look at me like, "What?" No, then they, "Oh, I'll schedule another hour or 2 hour next time."
yeah, I apparently have to get much better at running a business, because I actually I literally, like, I take the 5 minutes as a challenge to accomplish, right? It's like, okay, so what can I get done in 5 minutes that's useful, right?
Yeah.
And fortunately, this is where I think David, being that I would put him far ahead of the crowd, him and Phil Kenyon and Doc Neal, with all the research and stuff they've done, and especially David, the way he organizes his material, like, I can pick from so many different possible things that I know that, I don't think I'm harming anybody in the 5 minutes, but I'm certainly not rebuilding a putting stroke in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, sure. I usually just tell them that just to kind of get them to not do it. But
Of course.
if you give them the 5 to 10 minutes, it's like, yeah, they just want you to look at their stroke, and
Yeah.
I usually tell them, yeah, it looks great, or what, or you just try to give them one little setup feature or whatever, and then tell them, hey, we need to get together if we really want to get serious about this.
That's what drives me nuts about when people ask me putting questions, because, like, how's my stroke? And I go, I don't know. Where are you aiming? There's so many other things that it could be that,
Exactly.
like, yeah, it maybe. I literally told a member that the other day, or not the other day, but this year, he's hitting some putts. He goes, how's my stroke? And I go, I don't know. Like, I literally said that, because I don't know where he expects the ball to go. I don't know all these other things.
That's right.
Without actually, like you say, spending the appropriate amount of time trying to dig deeper and figure out how they put the puzzle together. Stroke is certainly a portion of it, but I think that's probably where the biggest shift in my putting coaching has been. Starting in the environment where we've got Sam Putt Lab and Balance Lab and Ball Roll and all these other things, and very much based on, the stroke is what matters, right? Now there's this whole other bigger world of things that actually probably relate back to how you move the putter and what you're doing, and how you're interacting with the environment, which is just so important to understand. And most people haven't even considered that that's a thing they should look at. And that's where, just kind of sprinkling some of that stuff in, they can start to explore with a little bit better knowledge behind it, kind of know what they're looking at a little bit more.
Yeah, I heard you in I think it was another podcast or interview, and you were talking about what I call reverse engineering, and that's how I flipped it, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago, when I started really learning how to coach putting. And I back into the stroke now. Like, the last thing I do is putt lab. First thing I do is get them out on the green and test them. And like, you talk about, get them in real world situations and see how they sort of organize their solutions. Right. So talk a little bit about how you go through, like, if you had enough time with a player, what would be the structure of your putting lesson?
I usually like to trick them and start them off on a dead straight uphill putt. And because the target's known, and it's great because everybody makes a putt when the target is known. And so it's kind of like, I sort of use it as an icebreaker in some ways. It's like, you rarely have people that miss that putt. And then I ask them why they're there, and they don't really know how to answer the question at that point, because they don't really know what they're doing. And so from there, I'll usually just sprinkle a bunch of random putts around, and kind of first watch them and observe them, and I'll ask just many questions. I think that's more where I'm just trying to figure out how they're putting it together, what they're doing, and before I get that far along, I want to watch them hit, at least as unbiased as possible. I want to watch them hit as many different putts as I can, a few times. So that process might take easily a half hour before I really say anything
Sure.
about about what I think is going on or what area we need. And
what are some of the questions that you ask or frequently kind of come up to kind of give the audience a little bit of guidance?
I think
it's really important.
Yeah, I think based largely what I really want to know for most people is kind of how they target, like what their system is for figuring out how the ball is going to get from where they are to the hole. Whether it's, are they visualizing the path of the ball? Are they, picking a spot outside the hole? Or they have an intermediate target. I kind of want to know what their process is, and it's amazing how many people just simply don't have a process for it, and that's, I think, largely where I end up going with a lot of people is that, hey, there are, pieces to this that we have to put together. I think the biggest piece, meaning predicting what's going to happen, like how the ball gets from where you are to the hole, is the picture. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't have any idea, like haven't thought about it, haven't done it, let's put some thought into what might work best for you. And like, let's just try a few things, and get you kind of thinking in that manner rather than, hey, does my grip need to change? Do I need to putt cross-handed, straight? Should the putter move straight back and straight through? Like it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Sure.
So I that's probably the biggest thing I want to figure out. If they have a process, what it is. If they don't have one, many times the first lesson is literally just putting a process in place. And, if we go to my Instagram page, you'll see some of the targeting things that I put out. Sometimes I'll post little things here or there, and it's nothing revolutionary, but, I like to put a lot of chalk on the putting green and draw the path to put out, just draw the different ways you can.
Do you draw it or do you let them draw it?
So usually if we're doing something like that, the simplest way I've come about to do it, I know John Graham has his black mamba and the rope, and
I do that as well.
And the thing that frustrates me about that is that now the rope is in the way. So, so what I end up doing is I'll take, usually like 8 to 10 golf balls, depending on how far away. And I just can you plot the golf balls along the line of the putt? And then once they have it where they like it, I'll either put like a paper dot down or I'll put a little chalk mark on the green so we can see the path that they've chosen.
Yeah, you can use ball marks as well.
Yeah, you can use ball marks too. Yeah. You could really use anything that helps you plot that out. And it's amazing how many different things you see when people do that exercise. I love the ones that's like everything starts out straight and then makes this big hook at the end. It's like, that's not how gravity works. But
that's the way they see it, though.
That's the way they see it. So the picture has to change, I think, for them to make more putts. And a lot of times, like a first lesson might not get past that. Maybe you get into a concept of how to move the putter, and but most of the time it's on that, very heavy on that piece of the puzzle for starters.
So at one point, do you have Sam Putt Lab now, or?
Yeah, I got Sam Putt Lab and Capto. So
at what point do you start to introduce technology, when you start to figure out the stroke needs some changing or the pattern needs changed?
I shouldn't admit this, but with most people, I don't need Putt Lab. At least not until down the road after they've worked on a few very basic concepts. Now with all my really good players, like if I have a mini tour player, I've got a couple, some really good players that come specifically for putting. It's not the first thing I do, but usually that first lesson we'll get to taking some data just to get a baseline for where they're starting. So that's,
I was going to say, even just for you, right? I mean, sometimes I won't even show it to them. I'll just capture it to have that.
Right. And I'll brag a little bit for a second. I think I was the only person to pass David Orr's eye test at Flat Stick Academy. So I'm pretty good at calling out what the stroke is. And I'll thank Kevin Weeks for that, of literally sitting at a computer watching putting strokes for like 5 years. So for the very basic, simple stuff, I don't really need to rush to get to the technology. There's just so many bigger fish to fry before we have to really fine tune something. So,
after the picture, then you go to where?
So So after the picture, we're usually going to speed next because
Touch.
that's what most speed and touch. That's what
Mhm.
most people, the next biggest piece. And really, I think you probably find this as well. Giving enough putting lessons. Once you get the picture better, generally speed tends to usually come along with it. Not perfectly, but
Yeah,
a lot
it
of times
improves.
you'll see some better touch kind of for free because the picture is a little more accurate.
Yeah.
But
Especially
then
the underreaders, right? I mean, the guys
Totally.
that are trying to fit that into the little low-hanging box that they have to ram it in, and yeah, you tend to see that improve a little bit.
Right. And then, from there, most people have too long a stroke for short putts and too short a stroke for long putts. So we kind of just really organize that where they tend to get the size right for each putt, and how they're going to move the putter is probably the next piece after that. So I'll usually start with concepts. Well, I'll always start with concepts first, making sure they kind of understand what they're trying to do, what they should be trying to do. And then kind of specifically how they do that after that. Any
drills that you use to give that through to the student, or anything that you can think of as, obviously you're not just telling them to go shorter, go longer. Like, how do you organize that for the student to get better?
Yeah, I think, I have, one of my favorite things to do is something I called speed plots, where I'll put you a certain distance away. Actually, really, to just put you at a point of the green as okay, I want you to make 4 or 5 strokes that are the same size, and I might have that mapped out with tees or chalk on the ground or something to give them sort of that sort of parameter of size stroke. And then obviously the goal from there is to roll the balls as close to each other as possible. So then you're kind of also gearing in speed and acceleration as well. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my favorite things to do is really not even define a specific target they have to get close to at first. It's okay, can you just move the putter within this framework and get the ball to roll a certain distance? And so that's one of kind of my favorite ones I like to do. Leapfrog.
Kind of like the speed stuff we did with Sweeney. Were you there when we did that at Aim Point?
I was not.
Okay. Yeah, it's similar to kind of what he was doing with the ropes or string.
Yeah.
Little quadrants. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Yeah. Leapfrog.
Leapfrog's a favorite too.
I love it.
I also do there. I get a little mean where I'll couple it with a start line direction drill as well. So you might have a, especially for the more not advanced players, but more developmental players that actually spend time practicing. Mm-hmm. Always make sure your leapfrog breaks for you folks listening at home, because that helps. Not each ball has to get past it, and so
unless you're going to break your back like me and put ball marks down.
Yeah, no, I just put them 90 degrees to 2%, and you're good.
Yeah, there you go.
so might put a line down, put something for start direction feedback as well, because both those things go together in putting.
I like
that. So I like to couple those drills together. So that's probably another favorite one as well. Yeah, there's so many things you could do.
For sure. Endless. All right, so talk to us a little bit about, I know you're big on gamification, right? When with your juniors, I think you probably do a lot of this stuff that we do with on course, and talk a little bit about how you train your juniors, because I think there's a variety of ways to go about it, and you've got some good players, good elite junior players you're working with as well. How does that work?
I like taking clubs away. I like not letting them use clubs they like in certain situations. I just like making them uncomfortable. And I think that's, that sparks a Coach Small story where we played 9 holes where if you didn't hit the shot, mind you, any shot, inside the length of the flag stick, you had to draw it back off of the green in the direction, between basically keeping between your ball and the hole. And so that actually morphed into a how do you beat the game? And basically you miss the green in the easiest spot because
On purpose?
on purpose.
I like it.
So that was my hack for the game, was to miss the green in the easiest spot where I could get the next one inside of the flag stake and be fine. So I did all right in the game because I kind of realized that after the first hole. I hit the first green, but I was like 35 feet away, and I had to drop like back in a bunker that was another 20 yards behind me.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, nope, that's not going to work. So I don't know that had the intention he was going for, but it's sort of like you had to think through how to solve it. And so I like to do that, like the typical 3 club. And, one of the things I try with, try to get them to think of, course management would be to just flat out every hole has a penalty on a certain side. Like, it doesn't matter. The hole might not actually have it.
Constraint.
Yeah, just put the constraint where, all right, left rough is a shot penalty, or whatever it is. Like I've done that with several where even if the ball was on the green on the short side of the flag, it was a penalty. So it's like, all right, figure out how to control your golf ball and keep it where we want it to be, which is a bit overkill, but I like doing things like that with the better players. Which is always fun because they get really frustrated. And so in those situations, I think also I try to put them in front of as much adversity as I can on the golf course, because they're going to face it. They need to learn how to deal with it and get beyond it. And so that's probably my main thing, is to make games for my better players hard enough that they get frustrated, which I'm kind of blowing challenge point theory off the table for a second. And just sort of, and that's probably where I am a bit too much of a hard ass at times, but I like to see how they respond, because if they don't ever learn how to respond to it and they can't just bounce back and figure out how to do it, they're probably not ever going to be very good. So
yeah. How do you create pressure? Like, besides that part of it, is there any other little tricks? Or I know you got something that, like,
so
I know people will call crowds around, or have people make noise while they're teeing off, or
that'll happen. This reminds me, so I'll digress to a personal story in a second. And I did this with a kid the other day, not to the same extreme. I did it because I'm literally crazy, as most people listening will probably understand by now. Back, growing up in Northern California, the winters here to start with were really hard for me. I didn't know what to do. And fortunately, we had TrackMan, and TrackMan had Combine. And so I spent a winter doing a lot of TrackMan combines. And so these were obviously indoors, which is a little bit easier than the outdoor version, certainly. But I remember doing my very first indoor combine, and I scored like 88.9 on the first one, which that's like really at the time was like top 10 all time worldwide at the time. It's not anymore. There's been a bunch of scores over 90, and I don't think I've done one since that year, to be completely honest. But I looked at that score after the first time doing this, and I go, this is too easy. So what I ended up doing, and I went overkill. My good friend Christopher Smith said I trained for speed golf. So I went and I actually did it at Skokie Country Club, where my friend Daniel Gray, I took over for him, but we did it at Skokie because he had a treadmill in his indoor area.
I know what's coming.
So
that's great.
So I ran at like 6 miles an hour on the treadmill, a quarter mile, like one lap around a track. And then I'd get out and I'd hit 3 shots for the combine. And what I did is per rules of golf, like my first shot, I had a minute to settle down, and then the next ones had 40 seconds. So like I gave myself legitimate time limits after it. Right. And so, the goal was to obviously make the combine harder. And I certainly did. My first goal was like, can I score over 80 doing this? And like my heart rate's up at like 170 or whatever it is. Like I'm just,
I love it.
It's incredible. I had, the one thing you also get to practice in that environment is that you're have so much adrenaline at that point that I had to club down on the combine. Like, so I'd get to the 160 yard target and I'd need 9 iron, not 8, where it would normally be 8 iron. So kind of learned that a little bit, which was kind of fun. And yeah, just I went way overboard on it. But I eventually I did that like 3 times. And one of the main problems is that took like 2.5 hours to do.
I was going to say that took a long time, right?
It took a long time. That was most of your day. Most of my day was doing that, which was fun when I used to have the time to do that. But eventually I got a score. My first time I did it, I called it an elevated heart rate combine. I got like 80.5 or something the first time, which I thought was really, really good. I got it up to I did it like 2 other times, and I got it up to like 85.5 or something like that. And I literally don't think I've done a combine since then.
Got to control your breathing for sure, right? I mean, there's a lot to learn there.
Got to control your breathing. So back to your original question. I digressed down,
it's all right.
Down that rabbit hole. So I had a kid. We've been working on some putting stuff, and so I had him Saturday morning. He's my first lesson on Saturday. So like I started, and he went through. He's got a warm up. He's really good about doing his warm up routine before, and so he always ends his warm up with some speed sticks, right? He'll swing them pretty good, so you get your heart rate going. And so I already had Putt Lab hooked up, ready to go. So I had him do his last set of super speed sticks, and I told him, I go, you get 0 break, you've got to get up there and hit 5 putts on Putt Lab for me. And so he got up and he did it. So like little challenges like that to put a little pressure on him where he's got to settle down, and he forgot one piece. In the chaos of that, he forgot one piece that we had been working on. Actually, it was the only thing we'd been working on. So nice focus. But no, that's little things like that, little challenges. I found that to be one, it's kind of fun too. And so I think little things like that tend to just spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. Trying to look through my questions here because I reached out to a few of your friends.
Oh, Jesus. This could go anywhere now.
I already asked you about technology, so we got through that. I can't. What did I do?
Actually, I have something on technology I'll just throw out.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we're just ripping, man.
Because after all, it's bothering me, and I might as well use this as my therapy session for it. I've used TrackMan for quite a long time, and it gets a bad rap, mostly because people try to, at least a lot of times, I think we're generally getting better at this, right? Where we don't try and put everybody into the averages. Right,
100%.
Everybody is a little bit different, and I'm literally having this argument with a student of mine now, a very good player, and like I happen to make the mistake, and this is totally a mistake, of letting him see optimizer, and he's not at optimizer, and his ego's going, shit, I don't hit it far enough, and I'm like, this thing goes way straighter at this spin loft than it will at your harder one, so like we're not trying to make you average at that point. Like I don't need that to be that way. But one of the things TrackMan is great at, and I think gets to the gamification side of it, where it is I think it's the best gaming device we have.
For sure.
And I know FlightScope does some. I'm not familiar with. I haven't used it, but I know they do some gaming stuff as well. But I don't really think we've scratched the surface of the potential of what we could do with the technology to make the learning environment really, really rich and rewarding. So it's something that I use a lot. It's today we were working on launch angle and carry distance, right? So just putting two parameters up there to say, hey, make these two work together. There are literally endless ways, and I've asked several times to the fine folks at TrackMan to make it possible to game every parameter, where we could actually build a game. So they basically test center on steroids, right? So rather than it just being carry distance, like, okay, hey, can we add components to it or take them away, or say, hey, make a game out of this.
Curve, trajectory.
Certainly. Yeah. It's like add those pieces to it. That would be such a great addition to the skill development. It really takes the hands off a lot of times. And I like to be, as best I can, as minimally intrusive to a lot of players, especially junior players, where they're just trying to figure things out. Is just stay out of their way. If you give them that environment where they can learn, especially where I'm at, where we're indoors and we kind of are hampered by not being able to be outside, the technology can do a really good job of doing that. It's not just for geeking out on club delivery. it's a really good platform for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's one of, when you can't get on the golf course, my version of putting pressure on my kids is I build them a test, just build them a skills test,
Right.
Working on stuff. And then you got 20, 30 minutes left and you're like, all right, let's test it out and see how good you are. Then they're like, okay, a test. Now they get a little nervous and now they got to put a score. They get one ball and they get a score. But the tour ladder stuff I think is great that like Altus does and Cameron, you can make it as tight or as wide as you want.
Yeah.
But I agree. It'd be cool to have that in the game, in the S center where, you got trajectory, you got curve, you got whatever. There's got to be a way to do it, I'm sure.
You can go one step further, and with virtual simulator, like you could make the environment in that case work the way you want to. So you have the shot set up for the simulator that will only accept these parameters, right? And then get to for something else. It's like use the environment to be the one that trains what you need. Like it could do such a great job of that. That's my favorite thing to do with virtual golf right now. Basically, I just keep it under 100 yards, 50 to 100 yards, and then we do, calm downwind into the wind just to control flight and trajectory. And I find that to be really fun because then I can play with, amount of wind and the kind of working through solutions for each player on how they, adjust for those.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I found my question here from Preston.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to sort of combine Preston's question with actually Robbie's question.
Oh God.
Preston asked how your playing background influenced your coaching, but I think Robbie's question was better in like how, and this is sort of what Robbie deals with is like, how do you, when you're playing, how do you turn the teacher brain off?
I don't have a good answer for you. I just can. And to be honest, like and I've had this happen before. I remember I've worked with a friend of mine, Brad Merrick. He's out in Northern California now playing, but he was playing mini tours, and we played the Illinois Open together. And, I'm coaching, but, we're paired together, competing against each other there. And we played 2 days together, and he comes up after me after the round, after our 2 rounds we played, and he goes, "Hey, what do you think of my golf game?" And I literally had to think about it. Like I wasn't keeping a running total of what he was doing, how he was doing. I just kind of am able to get into my own world. Maybe it's because I'm an only child and I can just kind of block other things out. Maybe, but
there it is.
But I think that I don't know how I'm able to do it, but I guess I can turn off the analytical part somehow. And I think probably maybe it's because playing still has I've done it for much longer than I have teaching. So I don't, talk to me in, what would it be, 20, basically would need another 20 years to match up, I think. So talk to me in 20 years and maybe I will have flipped by then. But
yeah, I just think it's an 8. I mean, and Robbie asked me that question. And I've never played at the level that you've played at, but I've always been a pretty good club player. And I never had any problem, going out and playing and I'm thinking about my golf swing differently. I just sort of know what I do, right? And you just go play golf.
Yeah.
I think it's,
creating this year specifically, I'd say the biggest difference is the process that I went through was so much better that, it wouldn't matter if I had a desk job or this year or what. I don't really think it would have made much of a difference. I think the process was so locked in that that kind of not much distraction was there. That was it was kind of the only time I had to myself this year. So I think just being able to dive into that, was very helpful.
Yeah, that's really cool. So second question was, and it's one that I always ask all my guests, is what books have influenced your career? Any books you would recommend for coaches, whether it's golf instruction or life? I mean, I love the personal development stuff, obviously. So anything that comes to mind?
It's funny. I'd have to go through some notes just to remember all the darn books I've read because they're all the same. I've worn out the nonfiction section of Audible and Amazon and Kindle. That's about all I read. I think I don't read many golf books. I'm actually, let's say, the one I usually tell at least the younger or the other other coaches we have at the club who teach a little bit. I just tell them to go to Adam Young's practice manual, because
Good one.
when I read that the first time, I'm like, shit, he wrote the book I wanted to write.
Yeah, it's kind of like everything you wanted to like explain to your younger self.
Shit,
is kind of what he put in there. Yeah.
So like I just give that one to like, okay, this will help you start down some paths. And the great thing about that book, right, is it has everything in such, it's not a great deal of detail about everything, but it's got a little bit about a lot of different topics. And so kind of whatever you're interested in, if you're interested in club delivery, then you go see TrackMan more. If you're interested in motor learning, you go read a bunch of stuff, boring stuff on that, like some of us have. So I think that's largely where I realized several years ago, where I had a lot of information, I had a lot of stuff, right? I had a lot of club delivery knowledge. I had a lot of ball roll knowledge and Sam Putt Lab knowledge. I just had a lot of information, but didn't have a lot of good ways to teach it to people. And so that kind of
application.
Yeah, it just didn't have that. There we go again. More application. I got myself in trouble on Twitter for that one. So I literally realized, I need to learn how to teach. And so that gets you down, at least that got me down the road of how people learn. And, kind of a funny thing, and it's sort of, call it fate. I don't really believe in it, but maybe I do after this brief story. That so I remember it was the very first Quan Level 1 seminar, maybe not the very first, but one of the very first Quan seminars at Rock Hill on Long Island at Michael Jacobs' place, right? And I'm traveling with Tom Losinger, a good friend of mine from Atlanta.
Hey, Tom.
Just, has taught forever. And we traveled together and roomed together, and we ate a meal that night before the seminar started with Michael Hebron. And it's like, okay, I'm like, how did that happen? Like, you got basically both ends of the spectrum in 24 hours.
So you're going all the way to the deep end, the other side.
The morning, the night before that first day of Quan Level 1, which you're going to learn more about physics than I ever thought I'd know. And I'm in Hebron's basement looking at magazines from 1937. It's like
museum.
And it's
Love it.
And it was sort of a very fortunate perspective at the time, because I was going to get more information, but it also put the seed in my head that there's way more to this than just the information. And that really, I think, however many years ago that really sparked the desire to learn more about how people learn. And that's where watching Marie, my daughter, grow and learn, it's like, hey, that's kind of cool. All the stuff you read about, that it's actually happening right in front of me. It's so cool to get to go through that and to see it. So it's just kind of a weird, funny coincidence.
No, I think that's great. It kind of leads me into I was doing some training with Robbie this morning, and he asked a great question, which our training is more two-sided. It's not me telling them how to do it. It's more of like, all right, let's bounce ideas off each other, and iron sharpens iron. Let's get better. And then I gave him a putting lesson, which he'll have to tell you about soon, which was pretty awesome. Totally non-stroke related, by the way.
Awesome.
Yeah. So he said, what are you thinking? What occupies your brain right now about teaching? Right. So all the stuff that we're talking about, biomechanics and the mental side and the brain and everything. And I said, well, that's a great question, because it's every year we sit down and we reflect on everything we've learned, in the last year or whatever. And, I've had Scott Calks come in, and I've done a lot of Ridyard stuff. We've got Tyler Farrell. We've done 3 certifications in the last 18 months on different parts.
Yep.
And I won't tell you my answer, but I ask you that question, like, what's next for you? Like, what do you want to learn more about? Building
cultures. I think what I think, and I'll go one step back, where, I think it's a John Wooden quote, right? Is you have not taught until they've learned. And so I think that, at least in the environment I'm in and how I want to get better as a coach and how I want my players to get better, I just think a lot about how to develop a deeper, richer, better culture of improvement and mastery and those things. That's probably where like my brain goes now. And so part of that is, I think, trying to organize. It's probably pretty apparent. There's some scatterbrainedness that I have, and my friends won't be surprised at all, because this is pretty much how conversations go. But I'm trying to somehow organize some of it, because I think at times not having a process, because I don't know that I have, like, you asked me the putting thing, like I kind of had to actually think about.
It's good to go through it, right? I mean, when I put together presentations, I always say you always need to present at least once a year to somebody, because it makes you write your stuff down and figure out what you're actually coaching and what are you teaching.
Yeah. So I think where I'm currently at is sort of, and I have all this information. I don't even want to count the number of notes on my iPad, Apple Notes that I have here. It's one of my exercises when I have some downtime, is to just I'm starting to go through these notes and sort of compile. Because if I've done one thing maybe pretty decent, is like, if I have a thought, I'll put it down somewhere. It's somewhere in there. Like, it's there.
That's like journaling. That's it's perfect.
It's effective journaling. It's just sort of, it's not formal. It's just, if I have a thought, I'll put it on a notepad and I'll put it down. And so now I've created this, I've just got a lot of different notes in here. And so part of it is just trying to organize that and say, okay, well, what do I believe in? And just trying to put some type of system, for lack of another better word of use there, but what do I want that to look like? And I think part of it is there's a culture, and what I also wonder too at times, where I think I look at some of the players that I have, and I want them to be more motivated to get better. And I'm like, how do I be more motivating is the other thing. I think if I have a weakness, I've always been pretty self-motivated. So the concept of motivating somebody else is kind of lost on me, to be honest. Like, you either kind of want to or not.
Absolutely. You can't make them be motivated.
Right. Yeah. So I think
I agree.
That's where I might be listening to a song in the car, and then all of a sudden I'll start screaming at one of my students. They're not there, but I've got to get it out somehow.
I love it.
So anyway, it's just I try to always, and back to the wooden thing, it's like I just always want to get better at it and find more ways to do it. And if they haven't learned it, I usually take the ownership that I didn't do a good enough job teaching it to them. So I have to learn more about how to do it, which doesn't usually help me sleep very well, but at least it feels rewarding to keep learning and doing it. So
I think that's a characteristic of a great coach, because you care, and that's what I tell my guys. Like, I'm still up late thinking about why didn't I do this differently in a lesson, or why didn't I say this differently? That's so funny that you said that, because it's so difficult to put your finger on it, but this is exactly what me and Robbie were talking about today. Because I asked him the same question, like, well, what are you thinking about? And he goes, because I'll observe him giving a lesson, and there's probably nobody that has as much information as he has at his age at this point. But
correct,
there's a difference between having the information and actually be able to apply it to a golf lesson.
Yep.
And we still struggle with that. And he's 24, and he would tell you that if he was here right now. And so I said, it's just about organizing it, making mistakes, figuring it out, because everybody's not, because you get something, you learn something new, like a game like training or constraints led learning or whatever, and you just like go all in, right? And you're like, oh, this is it, this is the way. And then you figure out, wow, this didn't work on this person, I need to shift, right? So it's like, it's being able to pivot. And that's why I told him, like, you're getting so much better at being able to recognize, okay, I need to treat this person this way, and I need to treat this person another way, and combining all those to create that culture, right, that you're talking about, right? And I think that's a great way to describe it. But it's such it's a puzzle, right? As we talk about with putting all the time, and being able to put those pieces together at the right time is so difficult, right? And then we've heard me on the podcast talk about the EQ versus the IQ. I think the young coaches out there are getting the IQ very, very quickly now on the internet, and having the avenues to get to coaches quicker through, social media and whatnot. It's like, how do you learn the EQ? I mean, is there an answer for that?
I mean, outside of experience, I don't think you can shortcut it to some
I agree.
degree. Yeah. And it's failing enough times, or at least going over, like, maybe you kind of got your way through the lesson okay, but then you realize afterwards, like, Jesus, you could have done that so much better. And like, those are the things you learn from. And I think the hardest part within the lesson, at least for me, is, and I'm kind of to the point where I'm transparent with the student now. It's like, all right, I'm going to shut up now and just let you practice for a little bit.
Sure.
Like, I'll stop talking. I'm not being paid by the word. And so just kind of taking the hands off and letting them do it. And they're just, those are the things that we probably don't talk enough about as teachers, right? It's like, what are the ways to do it? We had this conversation, I think, briefly last week where,
yes.
Watching how other people do it. You're a very hands-on type of teacher. So, I know you're scouting out, hey, where is he standing for this specifically? Like little things like that. Martin Hall did our teaching and coaching summit last year in Illinois, and he had some great little nuggets about, hey, I stand here because I do this and this or that, like just such practical information that we just don't really talk enough about. It's like, those are the things you have to probably go and watch really good teachers to observe them do it.
But then you got to get in there and do it.
Right. Then you got to get in there and try it. Yeah. And maybe
I was giving Robbie that lesson today, and he talked about, he's like, I could have been on the outside looking in at this lesson, and I wouldn't have got half of that to where I got it when I was actually participating.
Yeah.
So there's so many ways to kind of get it. But like you said, I think it was James Ridyard said there's no certification for experience.
Right. Nope.
It's just, and nobody at a young age wants to hear that, right? I mean, I didn't want to hear that. I'm like, I'm going to be top 100 when I'm 30, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, you can't hack that for sure. And I always go back to, it's probably something I ask, and I think this is where intention is so powerful. It's, I stop myself before I jump in and do something. And I always ask the question, and I got this from Tom Losinger, which I think is such a great quote that I remind myself of pretty much every day. And it's, people are struggling because they're doing exactly what they're trying to do. And like, just kind of let that sink in for a second. Right. And so a lot of times, like, you can get to somewhere with somebody so much faster if you kind of turn the knob a certain way, rather than like, hey, we've got to change this, this, and this. It's like, hey, well, this concept you had, and that's why I constantly ask questions more than I'm hopefully talking to them. Like, I'm trying to get out what they're really trying to do, because they're not really aware of it. And that's the hard part. For the student, is like, they don't really know what's valid. They don't really know, unless you're dealing with a really good player that can say, oh yeah, I feel this or this, or I'm, this is, if they're able to express something in a certain way, but most people aren't. So you have to really be paying attention, which is probably why I'm exhausted at the end of the day, because I'm listening literally to every word with every tone, just to try to decipher what the person is telling me, despite what they're saying. So it's to me, that's where you can get a pretty long way down the road by just diving that deep into what they say and what their beliefs are, if they have any. And then you can go from there. But I've stopped myself many times as like, okay, wait a second. I want to change the club face, but like, what are they trying to do first? Like, what are they, like, literally, what are they trying to do?
Most important question in the interview, I think.
Right.
What are you trying to do?
Like, what are you trying to do? And most of them give you that blank stare, like, oh shit, I didn't know this was going to be on the test. Like,
I love it.
And it's, it's, and so you just kind of have to dig it out of them. So you let them hit some shots. You ask them questions about certain things just to kind of test their knowledge. Like, it was great. I had this guy today, new student to me, and just through the interview process, the way he said certain things, I'm like, he's got a better knowledge base of what's going on than most, right? So you kind of confirm a few things, you ask a few questions, but I know he's, just the way he said a couple things about, kind of how he perceived what he was doing. And, he booked another lesson after we were done. So hopefully I did okay. And so, like, those are the things of always paying attention, and always be listening, and not ever taking a break off, and not staring at my phone checking to see what my Instagram notifications are. Like, I'm just like right there, on what the person's doing, and that's, to me, I think, been the most important thing, is just working with those intentions and forming them in the right way. And I'm probably billed by a lot of my members as a very simple instructor, which I find hilarious.
I've heard that about myself. Yeah, I'm like, oh, if you only knew what I was thinking.
Well, right. And then
when they say you make it simple, you're like, oh, okay.
I have to share this, right? So
Yeah.
Years ago, I had started working with this with one of my junior players, and he admittedly was struggling. He wasn't doing great, and he had these stretches of scores where he'd make some big numbers and wasn't able to respond. And so I'm sitting down with his dad at lunch one day. We did it a couple times a year just to kind of check in. And he goes, "I think you're too old school for my son." And I don't think he meant it as a compliment, but I certainly took it as one. Because I'm thinking
he's saying you're too basic.
Apparently, either that, and like I probably had just gotten home from from a Quan level 2 something or other, right? And it's like, I'm as new school as you could probably get. and I get that. So I sort of took that as a compliment, in the sense of, the kid at the time, very skilled, hits the ball fine. Like, if I put a shot pattern up of his, you'd be like, yeah, he could play pretty good. But the soft skills, that he needed to learn, like, that's where my main focus was.
So how did you answer that question?
Honestly,
I'm curious.
I wasn't ready for it, certainly.
Yeah. You were probably like, what?
I wasn't ready for it. And at first, I think my initial reaction was anger. Like, I'm pretty certain it was. And it was honestly a very tense conversation, very tense lunch. And I know I'm pretty sure at some point I said, if you think your son would be better off with another coach, I wouldn't be offended. I'm pretty sure I said that at some point. It's like, certainly kind of expecting to be fired after this conversation.
You're old enough now then, if you said that.
So,
I love it.
Well, at a certain point, I believed that this particular player needed to learn to respond to adversity better. And there's a moral to this story, in the fact that the next year, Dad puts a scorecard in front of me where the kid made a 9 on the second hole, right? Made another bogey somewhere along the line, shot 2 under the back, and shot 73 after making a 9. And like, he kind of just said, yep, I get it now. So it's like, in that case, I think I stuck to some instincts there, where this is what the kid needs. Like, it's not probably what you want, but like, it's kind of what he needs at the time. And that's, I guess that's probably who I want to be as a coach, is, as much as I can, is if hopefully I'm the one you need at the time. Maybe might not be the one you want, but hopefully you get what you need.
All right. Last question by Preston. What's the most controversial post / trend you've ever seen on social media?
Most controversial post.
I think I know the answer, but I don't know. That was his question.
I think I'm blanking on something. You don't want to see my draft folder of things
that you've typed and not sent.
Totally. It's 10. It might be 10 times longer than the actual number of tweets I have. Just like, hey, sit on that one for a second. Just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
I have opinions. I just usually, honestly, like, getting into getting into arguments on social media just doesn't do any good. And I think people that follow me know that hopefully I'm a pretty reasonable discussion person. Like, we can talk about something. Like,
Sure.
I genuinely want to learn more. And so if I'm asking you a question, I legitimately have that question. It's not either that or it's a snarky comment about something. I'm not as good at TJ Eaton as him, but I aspire one day to be that snarky on social media, but I'm not there yet, and I'm working on it. But
shout out to TJ.
shout out to TJ.
Yeah, I told him he's like just an old 60-year-old grumpy man in a 26-year-old body.
Younger than I am too. How did he get so grumpy so quickly?
I don't know. I love him.
It's impressive.
All right, so no meat there.
I don't know what Preston's getting at.
Yeah, I didn't understand it completely either, but I
like
thought about that.
I like to yell that. Well, here's a question for you, right? So when you're in Indio, Jason, which way does the putt break?
Towards Vegas.
Sure. Right. I have a joke with it.
Towards the what is it? Towards the mountain or whatever it is.
Towards the mountain, away from this. I joke with everybody. It's like it breaks towards Mariana's Trench, the deepest part of the goddamn ocean.
That's right. Yeah.
Everything's going that way.
Oh God, that drives me crazy too. Because I know we're both aim point guys, and it's just like, really, like that's another one of those myths. Like, have we not gotten beyond the water thing yet?
No, we hadn't. I gave a presentation last year, and I found some gold on the Golf Channel to put in the presentation, and it was fun to pick it apart because the belief that the person had that it was a real thing is just so incredible to me. And it's like, I know I'm not convincing that person that they're wrong, but it's just the belief that there's something mystical about it, when in reality, it's like, you can explain it. It's just, slope, tilt,
gravity.
It's not that complicated.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
So yeah, I don't know, Preston. I'll have to yell out.
Yeah, we'll punt on that one.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, I failed, Preston.
So how do you kind of go with the current theme about our teaching industry? Like, how do you feel the state of our teaching business is currently, and like, do you feel like we're heading in the right direction? Now I have a follow up. Yeah,
I do. I think, like we discussed last week, I wish, and this is I think what I think it got a little lost in translation, where like how I teach or how Jason Sutton teaches or how Robbie Fales teach, is that our competitive advantage against each other? Like, is that proprietary to me? And like, that's something that I hold as my value. And I don't view it that way. Like
no, not at all.
I don't. So I wonder when we get to seminars and people are up there talking, like, do they feel protective about how they do what they do, or is it something else? And that was just sort of my question in general. That I don't know if there's a good answer for it. I would hope that at least we talk a lot about growing the game and all trying to get more people better, and we're kind of all in this together as coaches, sharing ideas and do a great job with your staff. I try to be I try to answer. I don't get that many questions via social media, but I try to answer as many things as I can when they're asked. And
right.
So I just think I think we're still drowning in a lot of information, and I don't think we've quite gotten back up to the surface of maybe the important things of how to teach, and there are different ways of doing that. And so I think I'd like to see more on that, just how people do it, and that's I think why the best thing for me to do and for coaches to do is to go watch other people teach.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's the best. I mean, I look at my list of people that have been, sort of mentors to me, and I've watched them all teach. And so I'm sure some of their style is rubbed off on me in a certain way. And, you learn different ways, like I said, more tools in your box to help people with. Yeah,
I agree. And I got a lot of questions at the summit, like, when are you going to bring back the guru workshops? And I'll throw it out there. I'm contemplating now, because the last one that I was getting ready to do was going to be 80% outside, right? And any time that I speak, like, and I'm not saying I'm the greatest presenter in the world, but I always try to put up before and afters and like situations, right? Here was the deal. This is what I did. This is why I did it. These are the drills I gave them. This is how I, those are the things that I would want to know as a young coach. Like you said, it's the next best thing to going and actually watching somebody to teach, not just here's my teaching philosophy. Right. Like you said, that the information is very easily gathered now. I think, if you go to any seminars, and I thought the summit was good, but I'd seen 4 or 5 of those presentations like twice. Right. So, I mean, it's just it's that stuff that, we need to dig deeper into, whether you like it or not. I mean, Gankus I thought was pretty good because we actually saw what he does. Yeah. If you look at him a little closer, like we were talking, like he's brilliant at moving people around, getting people to change.
Yep.
Whether you agree with his philosophy or not, I thought it was great. I wish we'd have had Chuck Cook on the big screen, because I thought that would have been better. Because you could actually see. Yeah,
I'd love to watch Chuck teach a lesson.
Absolutely. He's one of my like mentors from afar. I thought, shout out to Chuck. If you listen to this, I'm trying to get him on the show and I can't get him to answer my messages, but yeah, I think he's fantastic at talking about evolving through his entire career. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
a little bit.
I agree. No, keep going. You don't have to step off. I think, yeah, I mean, seeing more people, getting more people to, I guess that are willing. It's live lessons are really hard.
They are difficult. Yeah,
because you're trying to serve 2 purposes, and if I'm being completely I'm trying to imagine myself in that situation, and it's just like have to be incredibly nerve-wracking, right? Because what we do for a living is judge what other people are doing, right? So that we're all judging what the teacher's doing.
Sure.
To a high degree. And so that's a really hard thing to deal with in and of itself. But to give a real live lesson, it's almost like the crowd needs to be far enough away that they can't hear, that they're not really there, but to the point where, the person teaching can focus on the student and do what they need to do, and then kind of step away, let the student practice for a little bit, and then sort of explain, hey, they said this, I'm going this way, we're going to do this, and kind of put the context for it that way. It's a really hard thing to pull off. We've struggled to, at least in this section, I'm on our education committee, and we've talked a lot about the live lesson portion, and it's really hard to pull off. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of good things that can likely come out of it. I think as a concept, it's great, but it's really difficult to pull off well. And one is just, we're all probably admittedly much better at teaching at our home golf course where we're comfortable. It's our environment, but pull anybody outside their comfort zone, there's going to be an adjustment. It's going to be a little different. It's definitely harder. So, and then at the end of the day, we know what we do. I don't know that we're always great at explaining what we do. And there's a different level to presenting versus, which is why, like you said, it's really good to try to practice present. I got my first opportunity last fall to present to just a group of members at a different club. I was invited to do it, and it was great. Yeah. I got to put some ideas down, and I got some great questions from the audience. It just really challenged you to get better, at what do I do for it? So, I think those are all great things.
Yeah. I'm on our teaching committee as well. And we've done live lessons the last 3 years at our fall program, and we deal with the same thing. And I had to actually do a live lesson last year, and it's a combination of you trying to focus on the student and also share with the crowd. It's tough to do both. Or are you going to do one and then just do Q&A afterwards? I mean, it's just, there's no perfect way to do it. Right. But again, it's always been the most probably successful and most, at my workshops, everybody loves the live lessons better than just people presenting, which you got to get the information, no doubt.
Right. I think
you have to have both, I think.
Yeah. I think in the case where maybe if it's another coach that's up there, that's kind of modeling for it. Right. And so the coach is going through their process. And so you're not really maybe it's better to not have like a student that is like really depending on getting better in front of you. Like it's a tough environment to do it. It kind of allows you to get your philosophy out and how you do things, but but then not not spiral out of control.
Yeah, no doubt. So have you had any sort of adversity or some failures, roadblocks per se in your career that have set you up for later success? Anything you can share?
I have something some I'd call major adversity, but I'm honestly not ready to share it with the world.
That's cool.
There's a few people that would know what it is, and it's not a life-threatening or changing thing. It's just it was just a pretty big mistake on my part, and I'm not really honestly ready to talk about it. And but I'm to the point where I will tell you that I have something to talk about, but I just can't get there yet.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I'm probably not completely over it enough. And if you can dig really deep into my playing history, you can find it. But that's about all the hints I'll give you for it. But it's at the end of the day, whatever level of adversity that was, and it felt like the biggest thing in the world at the time. And I'm still here. I can, that's the biggest thing is how much different, being a parent makes you, and this.
Absolutely.
And I just, so many things matter less. Like just the perspective is in the right place. And, it's like, I'm still here, and, everything seems to be working out okay. I enjoy what I do. At times it is frustrating. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it for younger coaches that might be listening. Like,
no, it's not all
if
rainbows
you care,
and unicorns.
if you care about getting better, you're going to be frustrated at some point.
Absolutely.
And, I think that's where maybe my, any adversity I get, well, I think I always go back to, I'll constantly replay lessons in my head. And, like I said, kind of back to the John Wooden quote that always sticks into my brain. And I guess I put the ownership on me to get better. So like, if somebody doesn't, that's I've got to learn and get better from that. And that's really where, I guess that's really how I tackle some adversity, at least seemingly day to day. It's not big adversity, but it is. I think it helps me get better.
No, I appreciate that. And that's a good way to dance around it. That's okay.
I'm not a good dancer. So
no, that's fine. So do you have any tactics or tricks or go-tos when you do feel overwhelmed or unfocused, stressed out? Any daily habits or anything that you
the like we talked about earlier, the non-scheduled journaling, it's just kind of like rogue journaling here and there. I'll just start typing stuff out or writing stuff out. I will probably I have at times of living in the city, and I will say one of the pieces of adversity I guess I will say is I mentioned it earlier, like I probably identify myself as a failed player, meaning that I didn't get to my ultimate goal, right, of playing the PGA Tour. I think that ship has likely sailed. And so I really personally struggled with that for a good long while. And what actually really helped the most, and I credit my wife for it, I started doing yoga. And so I, really sort of, and it was fortunate I had a great guide that really had a really great message, and just sort of said, hey, this is your time on the mat to kind of be in your own place, to, let go of whatever else is bothering you and stress you out. It's like, this is the moment right here on the mat to be present. And one thing I don't do as good a job, but he had a concept called the fives, basically, where if 5 minutes of yoga, 5 minutes of breath work, 5 minutes of meditation a day. And when I do get really stressed out, I do that. And so that does sort of kind of reset the system, so to speak. So that's probably but it's not a consistent thing. And I'm
sure,
it's something that I could be better at doing, but it's kind of a more as needed.
Yeah, it's like me in meditation. I'm a complete amateur, but it's like random, but it does help. All you're doing is practicing mindfulness, right? And you get yourself to shut it down and think about what's important. But yeah, your 9-month-old will do that for you now.
And your running probably does some of that as well, right?
100%. Yeah, that's sort of it's a stress reliever / way to sort of get away from everything. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'll yell in the car a lot. That I don't know if that counts as a stress reliever.
It's getting it out.
But it has to get out somehow, right? It's like I caught a text message before I got in the car, and I was trying to check out and just kind of listen to some music, and I caught myself not listening to the song and just like thinking about it. So I had to just scream at something just to sort of let that out, just to kind of get it there, let it run its course, and it worked. I think I'm.
Yeah, don't send that text. Don't text that person right back.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And it's a shame that you don't have my my escape of drinking wine.
No,
I feel bad for that.
Nah, it's okay.
Your intestinal problems.
I cope. I think I cope okay.
It's probably better off. Trust me.
It hasn't come up in a while. It's just kind of ironic we're talking about it. I have a donut waiting for me on the counter when we're done. That's like my prize for being done with the podcast today. Which if you noticed, and those that follow me know that I spent a good period of time posting mostly about donuts rather than golf, and I've kind of tried to temper that down a little bit. Like I'm kind of growing.
I heard that. I think when I was doing my research, I heard something about the donut hut or something.
Yeah, well,
is that what you call your teaching area?
No. Well, what I did do originally, it gets very expensive, and he doesn't make them anymore, I don't think. But Tyson Lamb has these donut head covers. So I have a thing with all of our juniors. When you break par, you get a donut head cover. Just sort of as a little reward. I've given, 3 of them out? Only 3 of them out. They're like $75 a piece. I need to up the rate a little bit. They're expensive. They're hard to get too. So like that was kind of the one reference. And partially it was from living, in downtown Chicago. And it's kind of it was an in vogue thing back when, a few years ago. It still is. But, just a bunch of donut shops pop up, and they happen to be mostly within walking distance. And yeah, who doesn't love a donut? So
I hear you. Oh, that's great. So if you could get your message out to the world, the billboard question, you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
What would you put on your billboard and why?
So I have given this some thought for about the last 7 days. So I wanted it to be meaningful enough and serious enough. So I really think that I'd put there is no progress without change. And so I think they can apply to pretty much any situation. It can apply to golf instruction, but it can apply to things bigger and deeper than that as well. So, and I think for, part of the experience of doing the yoga, one thing that always comes up is that the only constant is change. And I'm a different person than I was, especially 9 months ago. There's some fancy saying about you can't jump in the same river twice, but I'm a completely different person, and now than especially 9 months ago when my daughter was born. So, and that's been the best progress ever.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Anything that I haven't asked you that you want to discuss before we wrap up?
No, I'm really pressing. The pressing one's going to bother me now. I'm going to, as soon as I turn my phone back on, because it's off right now. It's just been great actually to just have the phone off for, what is this? It's
couple hours.
Couple hours almost.
Almost.
I will be giving him a hard time about that question. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time, man. It's been awesome spending more time with you, and hopefully we can do more of that. And I know we'll cross paths again. Tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you. Give them your social handles, Twitter, Instagram.
So I'm going to keep most of the golf stuff to Instagram. So at Chaussard on Instagram, I do more, kind of doing more in story posts these days than actual posts. Twitter is kind of it's a different handle. It's at super_G1 or super G_1, whatever. Regular super G wasn't available in 2008 when I tried to get it.
I'll put in an intro.
And so I just think that, so like Twitter is more like, I think is more for conversing like with coaches and a little more, I don't want to say personal stuff, but like just in general.
Sure.
It's a different level of conversation where I think I try to keep Instagram more just kind of in the golf coaching and donut realm.
Love it. Thanks, my man. You're the best.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
You got it. What's up, everybody? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to Garrett for coming on the show, sharing his incredible knowledge about teaching and life that I know will help all of you coaches become stronger coaches and better human beings in general. Make sure you follow Mr. Garrett on the gram at Chaussard and on the Twitter at super_G1. And give him a social wave and say thank you for coming on the show and thank you for sharing all the valuable information that he gave us. Thank you again for our sponsors, nvdhemp.com, and make sure you use that promo code GURU20 for your 20% discount, and to Hack Motion Wrist Sensor Training Aid and use the Guru code for that one as well to get free shipping on that incredible training aid. You can also follow and reach me on Twitter or Instagram at GolfGuruTV. Give me a follow. I would appreciate it. And also share this episode and tell me what your takeaway is from Garrett or any of the past episodes that you are going back to catch up on. Let's get some sharing going around. I'd love it when people do that. That's my only thing I ask is to just share it with somebody you think will help. And also go to the App Store and download my Golf Guru app. It's really taken off now, powered by Swing U. So enjoy that, all you players and coaches out there. Also check out my website at golfgurutv.net, where you can find videos, articles, and more information on my teaching and coaching. If you have a question or a comment, if you don't want to shoot me a DM, just email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com. And I love that. I appreciate all the kind text messages and DMs as of late. Emails are good as well. So I appreciate all the love. This show and all episodes of the Golf Guru Show were produced by myself, Jason Sutton. Music is by Kevin MacLeod and Zach Mullet. And leave me an iTunes review or a rating. Give me a 5-star rating. That would be awesome to keep this thing going and keep me in good graces with Apple. I appreciate it. And as I always leave you with, my mantra: study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much for listening.